Hi, welcome to my hobby prison. I wanted to put some, maybe some verbal direction in this part. This part's pretty important to the way that I make these valet trays with the lining and stuff. I glue the lining to the bottom, but the sides fold up, which decreases the amount of leather that you need for the lining. So I don't glue the whole thing on at once. I start with the very bottom of the tray over the padding and then glue the sides up later. So what I was doing right there in that part was marking the area on the inside where the padding is to get an idea of where to put the glue, because I don't want to go over too much, but I want to make sure that I get the part glued down that needs to be glued down. So it's kind of important. Thought I'd mention that. You'll see the process as it goes on. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Now that both sides of the glued surfaces have tacked up, I'm trying to glue it. You just take your time on this and try not to fold the glued leather to each other. You'll ruin it if it gets stuck together. It's terrible. So just take your time when you're lining up the glue edges and you should be okay. It just takes a little bit of patience. Just go slow, easy peasy. And I noticed while I was doing this that the suede leather part had shrunk a little bit. So I didn't have enough glue on some of the edges, but it should be okay because we're going to glue up the sides too. But I just noticed that. I thought that was odd that it shrunk just a tiny little bit. And right here you can see me that I'm rolling the surfaces onto each other. I'm not laying it on there. I'm rolling it on there to try to avoid wrinkles. I'm using a bone folder here to try to get that leather tucked into those grooves that I cut into the the shell. We'll just call it the shell. And that's to help avoid any pieces of, well, not pieces, but sections of leather that are bulked up and bulging and that aren't attached to the shell somehow. And y'all don't need a bone folder to do this, but that was one of the tools that I waited to buy, but I really like it. I use it a lot, and it comes in handy. It's smooth. It works well. Anyway, just make sure you get everything tucked in and glued down, because we're going to be folding up the sides here soon, and we don't want any leather that's not attached to that shell. You have to do this part very carefully, or that glue is so sticky. You'll see over here on the left side, I screw this up just a little bit. That gets up right there. It gets up too far on that edge piece too early. So I've got to try to peel it back off. See how it's getting that fold in there? Just like that. And I was able to save it luckily, but that doesn't happen real often. You really have to be careful. Just go very little bits at a time. Make sure everything's even so you don't get weird folds and creases in it, because you don't, well, obviously it'll look ugly, but I was able to save it. That's a lot of well, you just have to start over with that part, because that'll be covered up with the liner. But man, thankfully that was the only part that I really struggled with right there. Everything else went on pretty smooth. Just take your time, go slow, don't pull it edge to edge, pull it from the inside up towards the outside edge. That'll help keep those folds from happening. And right here I'm just making sure that liner, that suede leather, gets tucked into that crease so it doesn't bulk up on the inside. And here I'm just using my bone folder to make sure that the surfaces are adhering together really well. And once this is done, only 3 more sides to go. Measuring thread here is pretty tricky. I always get way too much. So what I do is I'll take the difference, like where I'm going to start my thread run, and I'll take some thread out to the end of my thread run, and then I'll double that, and then I'll take that length and I'll times it by 4 or 5. I used to run out of thread until I started doing this. I mean, the amount of thread that you cut. I didn't run out of thread, but the amount of thread that I cut, I would run out. And then I started just doing, it's still really too much. On leather this thick, where you're not going through much, the thickness is thinner, you could probably take your length and double it, and double that, and then half that. So I don't know what that would be, but you would probably use a lot less thread than I do. I think I'm going to start doing that from now on, because by the end of a thread run, I've got about a third of what I started with left over, so you don't need that much. And this is pretty tricky right here, especially when you use a fat needle like that with that thin thread. This is 0.06 thread, and what you want to do is you just want to lock that thread around that needle so it doesn't keep pulling out of the eye, and that's a pretty good trick to use. You can take something and flatten a part of the thread. Makes it a little bit easier to do that, lock the thread down. Anyway, hope you're enjoying the video so far. We're going to start stitching around the outside edges here, and I'm using a stitching pony. Now, I made mine, and I just had leftover wood, and I used scrap leather. The only thing I bought was a pretty long carriage bolt and a wing nut, but I think you should just buy one. I think they're really inexpensive from Amazon, like under $20. But before I had built this stitching pony, I would just hold it and then do the saddle stitch. We'll talk about a saddle stitch here in a minute too. But it took just get a stitching pony. It really saves you a lot of time. It holds your piece for you. You get better stitching. And make one. They've got instructions and YouTube videos on how to make one. But like I said, for $20, you can get one that'll work. And I mean, there's not much to it. I don't know how you could screw it up. A lot of them don't use hardwood. I didn't use any hardwood. I've had this stitching pony for probably 10 years, and I've never had any problem with it. And it's just made from cheap pine. But it definitely figure out a way to get one. Anyway, let's talk about some saddle stitching. And I can tell you how to do it. There's a lot of good videos on YouTube on how to do it a lot better than I do. But I'll just tell you, what I do, you have to make every stitch the same. They just have to be exactly the same. You have to make every stitch exactly the same, or your stitches won't match. So what I do is I always start on the right side, and I'll push my right needle through the hole on the right side, and then I'll take, you'll see here what I do. And then this is the starting. It takes me a minute to get my groove on for this. This is the very first stitch. So you can see here, I've taken my left-handed needle, and now oh boy. let's just look at this for a minute. All right. And you don't have to pull very hard either, just pull it out. Okay, left needle going through the stitching hole, pull that through, and then I pull that needle that I just pulled through back towards me to keep the thread tight, going towards me, and then I'll take the needle that was in my left hand and I'll push it through in front of the thread, and then I'll just pull it. You'll see. So right hand needle goes through, I pull the string a little bit back towards me, I'll go underneath that thread with my left-handed needle and then put it behind the thread that came from the right-handed needle. So just watch how I do it. And it's not hard to do, but if you don't do it exactly the same every hole, you'll notice a difference. And I'm not good at it. And there's different techniques, like somebody will take, okay, right there, they'll take the thread from their left hand and wrap it around that needle and then pull it through to do a knot. I don't do that. I've tried it. I didn't like the way it looked, so I just do it this way. And you'll notice that I'm not pulling very tight either. Anyway, I'm starting to get in my groove on this one, and once you get in your groove, it goes pretty fast. It takes a lot of practice. I don't even know how many stitches, 10,000 stitches maybe, since I've been doing this. I started doing leather work in 2013, leather crafting in 2013. And I don't do it steady, but I've done a lot of projects, so it's taken a lot of practice to get this saddle stitching down so it looks halfway decent. But I'm a banana head. A normally smart person could probably get it right off the bat, because it's not difficult. It's just consistency and doing the same stitches exactly the same. I'm really starting to get in the groove right here. Just see that, and then I'll go underneath and behind the first stitch, pull the second stitch through. One more time. Pull it tight towards me, underneath, and then behind the first thread and pull through. Easy. Alright, when you get to the end of the thread run, which we're doing right here, you want to back stitch. So you just back stitch the same way you do your main saddle stitching, one through one side and one through the other side in the same hole. It's going to be a tighter fit because there's already thread in it, but you do it the same way. You pull the first thread back towards you. Well, in this case, you should pull it forward. I didn't do it at this one, but it's a back stitch. Anyway, I'll go, that's one, and then I'll do another back stitch right here, or another saddle stitch right here to go backwards, and then I'll do a half of one. So it's like 2.5, and then the threads will end up on the same side. Just trim them and melt it with a lighter and smash it down. A lot of guys will go through the seam and then make a little knot. I've done it this way for years and I've never had a stitch come loose. So this is just the way I do it. Like I said, there's a lot of videos on saddle stitching and back stitching, and they're way better than mine are. So pick a video, learn how to saddle stitch. It's hard to see because of the glare of that lamp. My videography is not very good. But you can see they're all pretty even and decent looking stitches. So anyway, we're going to do the other 3 sides the same exact way, and then we're going to stitch it together with a box stitch, and we'll talk about that. Here's a different angle on me doing a saddle stitch. Maybe you can see it a little bit better, but see how I pull that thread back towards me, and then I take my other needle, push it under the first thread, and then in front of it, I don't know how to explain it. Like I said, there's a lot better videos on YouTube about saddle stitching, but thought you might like to see a different angle on it, and it really does go pretty quick. If your holes are lined up and your needle's not too big and you've got good thread, it goes pretty quick and it looks nice. Just showing you the back stitching here now, just from that other angle. Just do a saddle stitch backwards, 2.5 stitches. 1.5 would probably be all right, but I do a 2.5 just to make sure. Let's take a minute here and talk about box stitching. Now, I hate box stitching, but it's something that you need to be able to do. And the idea is to take 2 pieces of leather and combine them like this to form a right angle. Now, I hate box stitching. I can't do it. I'm not good at it. But you need to be able to do it. I can do it a little bit. I hate it, but I think it makes me a better man. And anyway, you need to use, you can't use a real thin piece of leather. Now, the Valet tray I'm working on is made with 6-ounce leather. Now, ounce is just a reference to the thickness of the leather. I printed this up from the internet, and it just says over here the millimeters and then what ounce it is. You can use inches, but most people go by ounces or millimeters. So 6 ounces is about 2.4 millimeters thick. I would say not to go any thinner than that, just because part of your stitching needs to come through the edge of your leather, and the thinner that is, the less area you have to work with. And if I go too thin, I end up tearing this out. I'll show you because I'm going to give you a little bit of a demonstration right here. Guys could probably do it, like real leather crafters could probably do it with thinner leather, but 6 ounces is about the thinnest I've got. These 2 scraps right here are 9 ounce, and hopefully I'll be able to give you a demonstration. So you've got 2 sides of your leather. One side of your leather needs to have holes punched clear through it from this side and then come out on the same over here. This other piece, you just need to mark here where the holes are going to be. So we'll start doing that. I like to start at the top so I can get it even. I'll let this top tang just rest on the outside, and then I'll drive it in here and go through all the way to the edge. And that's thick leather. We're not going to do very many of these. Look at that. I pounded on that, and this leather's so thick it's just hard to get through it. So we'll do, oh, I don't know, a few. All right, we got them all the way through. So this side is going to be our through holes. This other side, we're just going to mark where we're going to start our stitching. So the top tang on the edge of the leather, and we're not going to go all the way through. We're just going to mark the holes a little bit. See, it's not all the way through. And one more set. So now we need to go and make holes from this out through this. All I have is this scratch awl. You can get diamond stitching awls, which would be better. But what you do is you take this and you poke a hole through it to come out in the middle, hopefully without tearing the leather. I'll show you what this is on this last one. I'll show you what I do. Right here, this is what I'll do if the leather's too thin. I'll be taking it and pushing it, and it'll tear. And then what are you going to do? So I have to use thicker leather. Like I said, 6 ounces is about my max. So once you get all these poked through, then you just saddle stitch it. So we'll take this, pull it through here, take this, and it goes through the edge here. And you could probably use a smaller needle too, except I find the smaller needles break on me. So this is a number 2 harness. Look at that. See that? Well, this is just a demonstration anyway. And what happens is it'll suck it up to make a corner. And you just saddle stitch it all the way down. And you just, the same kind of a stitch, you do it exactly the same every time. Like that. Pull this through. Okay. And then take the one that you just pulled through, pull it back, make sure the other side goes underneath this thread and to the forward side of it. I say the forward side. I don't know what the real name is, but you need to do that so you don't push your needle through the thread again. God, see, I hate this. This is such a pain in the butt for me. Some guys do it really good. I'm not one of those guys. Jeez. Okay. Pull it tight. And then you start at the same side that you started with before. Drive it in,
Grab it through the side of the other piece of leather. Pull it taut. This piece, this thread goes underneath the one that you just pulled through. Pull that forward, and then make sure this one goes underneath this one and then in front of that one. Push it through the edge. And through that other. This looks crappy now, but once it gets done, it'll look better. But see how it starts to form that, so it makes that right angle edge. This thread is going under this one. Pull it up and then push your needle in front of the other one. And pull it taut. One more. See how I'm doing the stitching the same way every time? That's the secret to a good stitch. Well, except for this one. See how the needle's catching the other thread? You don't want that to happen. That's why you pull it. Well, pull it so it's out of the way, up, and you push it. Jeez, I used way too much thread for this demo. And then you go in front of it. Like so. Okay, now I didn't go deep enough. You can see right here that I did not go far enough back onto this leather right there. It should have come through closer in the middle. Even though this is one, we'll just go, well, we'll make a new hole right here. God, this really sucks. And then we'll try to push it through the side here. A chisel would do, a stitching awl would do a much better job at this. And we're probably going to have to skip this one. So I messed it up. But we'll try it anyway. See, I don't like doing them. So we'll skip this middle one, and we'll just go here on the spot here. And see, there's much more leather to stitch through, and it'll make for a better looking stitch. See the difference? Right there, it's not got these lumps in it. Anyway, box stitching takes a lot of practice, and I'm not good at it, but we're going to move forward and box stitch up this Valet tray. Hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, but there are a lot of YouTube videos on this that show it a lot better by people that really know how to do it.